finished Onyx Storm, and I can tell you, I have figured it out. I figured out who the Venin brother is at the end of Onyx Storm. And it's not Bodhi. No, that's too obvious. It's Garrick. It's Garrick. And I'm going to tell you how I know it is Garrick. So let's start with using Rebecca's own words, okay? So during a Q&A that was conducted regarding Onyx Storm, the interviewer asked her who it is that is the brother that turns Venin at the end. And Rebecca states that it is, let me use her words. She said that we need to pay attention to who is missing and to someone who feels like what they've given isn't enough. So someone missing and who feels like what they've given isn't enough. Okay, so let's start first by looking at who is missing at the end. So if we go to the literal end, which is Violet's final chapter, what we know is that when Wilson comes into the room, you know, when Violet is waking up, he reports that there are 5 missing riders, and someone that says Garrick is missing 2, right? So again, that's pretty obvious, the missing rider, right? But let's take it a little bit further. So in the chapter, let's go back even further, because remember she says at the end, but at the end, we can also go at the end of Xaden's scene, right? So what we know is that after Xaden decides to touch down, save Sigel, save everyone, and become completely Venin, then he starts to, his shadows go up and he's able to get kind of like a bird's eye view of everything. So what he says is, I'm everywhere all at once, shedding the net that ensnares Sigel, tearing the heart from the wyvern who has Dane and Kath backed into a corner, rushing over Imogen as she looks down to the sky. Okay, so this is interesting because this is right after we get this scene with Imogen and Garrick, and they were together. So in this scene, there's a couple reasons why this scene is significant, but one of those things is Imogen says to Garrick, so remember, it's disarray. We have fighting everywhere. We have Venin, we have Wyvern, Rhiannon is over there fighting somewhere. You have our Riddick and or Bodhi, I think one of them is vomiting. It's just a lot going on, right? So in this scene, you have image where Garrick is feeling like I need to do something, right? It goes back to Garrick's need to do enough. So he starts walking away from Imogen. So Imogen says to Garrick, where are you going? I shouted at Garrick's back, I can't walk again. Even if I made it to Erasia, I'd never be strong enough to get back. Okay, this is Garrick saying this to Imogen. So I'd better find some effing way to do something, right? So this is the last thing that Garrick is saying. I've got to do something. This is the last that we've seen of Garrick. So keep that in mind. I've got to do something. So again, when Xaden's shadows come, it's significant that he says, I saw Imogen. Now, he could have mentioned anyone else. Remember, this goes back to Rebecca's comment about who's missing. Why is it that he couldn't sense Garrick at that time? They could have been that far apart. Why not see Imogen and Garrick? It's significant that he only mentions that he sees Imogen, no Garrick. Another interesting thing about this scene is that Imogen points out, when it comes to the way that Garrick looks, she states that I noticed the circles beneath his eyes, his beautiful eyes, the unusual pallor of his complexion. So we know at this point he's completely depleted of energy. Remember, because of his particular signet where he can move quickly through time and space, he's just completely exhausted. So we know at this point he's spent and he needs energy, and energy from somewhere, we know where, the ground, Venin, he needs to get it in order to help him. And remember, his goal is always to help, right? So here's more clues that he's depleted, but yet still wanting to help. So let's go back to the scene with Theophany. Now, we have Violet says something very interesting when she sees Garrick, right? So she specifically points out Garrick shows up. Remember, he shows up with the box that has Jack in it. And she points out that he shows up, he looks exhausted and moving slower than usual. Why point out that? Why say he's moving slower than usual? Okay, so we ask ourselves, why would Garrick do this? Why would he do that? Why would he sacrifice himself? Well, what we know about him is in Fourth Wing, there was a scene where he was training the first years, and Violet made an observation about Garrick where she points out that Garrick is always about mission first, niceties last. Okay, so part of Garrick's character arc is to always make those difficult decisions, and he understands that that's something that he needs to do. At one point, his reaction to General or Melgren's premonition, when Melgren had a premonition about that things were going to go south, Garrick states, make a different choice, get a different outcome. He understood that we can't just rely on predictions. We have to sometimes make the hard decisions. So he had to make the decision to turn Venin in order to save everyone. So when Xaden makes a dangerous decision, Garrick says, you kept us alive all these years. We get to decide how we die. I'm with you. So he clearly feels like he owes something, like all the Mark ones, because Xaden sacrificed himself for all of them. So of course he feels like he owes Xaden something. So I'm with you. I'm willing to die with you. That takes us to the largest smoking pow, right? And that is that final scene where Xaden comes across his brother, right? So Xaden says, how could you do this? Choose this after watching me stumble and fall for the past 5 months. This shows Xaden never expected this betrayal, and Garrick is the last person that he suspects. Now, keep in mind, now this is the most important part of that statement. He said that you have known what I've been through for 5 months. What we find out during the first chapter of Onyx Storm, final chapter of Fourth Wing, is that the only people that knew, because this all happened over the duration of 5 months, the only people who knew that Xaden was Venin from the beginning was who? Bodhi, Imogen, Violet, and Garrick. And I already told you, it's not Bodhi. He is too obvious, right? We know it's not Imogen, and we know it's not Violet. So therefore it has to be Garrick. Garrick knew from the beginning, but Garrick was so depleted. He was so exhausted, as observed by Imogen, as observed by Violet, that he knew, like he said in his words, I got to do something. So he knew at that time that the only way that he'd be able to get energy in order to help was to put his hands in that ground and to tug on that power source to become Venin. So again, why would he do that? Because he felt like he needed to make a difficult decision, and he's always been about the mission. He was declining. He had to do something. So why, Rebecca? Why would we make Garrick the Venin at the end? Well, I'll explain why. Because Violet's going to need help. So Jarls has continuously throughout the series teased Imogen's emotions for Garrick. So before Quinn died, she told Imogen to tell Garrick how she feels. Well, we know that she never got that opportunity to tell Garrick how she feels. Oh, but she will have that opportunity to tell him. And that's what takes us into the next book. So now that Garrick may be on the dark side, that could push Imogen to team up even more with Violet. So Violet needing to pull Xaden back from the dark side, it's possible that the team, the six, would have helped, right? That they would have helped her bring him back. But maybe there are bigger fish to fry. So maybe Imogen would be like, Xaden kind of chose this and eventually will help. We know that's our friend, but it may not be on the top of the priority list. But because Garrick's on the other side, that might be the little push that she needs to go and to help Violet. So she sets up this emotional arc. So now we have the relationship between Xaden and Violet, and I believe we're going into a blooming relationship between Imogen and Garrick. And it might be Imogen that could pull Garrick back over, just like we will need Violet to pull Xaden back over. So it will be the catalyst for Team Imogen and Violet. Biogen. Or lit. Okay, so final thoughts. What's to come? Garrick and Xaden will be the central conflict. So he will have one of his brothers over there helping him navigate this new world of Venin through Garrick. Imogen will be key to saving Garrick. Violet and Imogen will team up. And we're in for a wild ride. But again, if I have to put my foot in my mouth 2 years from now, I hope it's not 2 years from now, I will. But I'm thoroughly convinced that that's Garrick. And it's setting us up for the next book. Let me know what you think. And if you have any more clues that maybe I glanced over that can bring us to how Garrick is that brother.